everybody, and welcome to a look at the week ahead through Vedic astrology for the week beginning the 18th of April, 2016, taking you up to and through the 24th of April, 2016. Before I get started this week, I wanted to let everybody know and remind those of you who have been interested that my extensive Nakshatra webinar. My extensive Nakshatra webinar course there, got it out, starts Saturday the 23rd. This is a course that's going to run consecutive Saturdays from the 23rd of April to the 29th of October. The course registration details can be found through the link below. We're going to be learning a lot of Nakshatra techniques that, I'm sure other people have played with, but I haven't really seen anywhere else. So who knows, maybe they haven't been played with. Maybe other people aren't working with it. I don't really know because I don't ask everybody what they work with, so to speak. But a lot of very good techniques that I have found to be very precise in terms of getting a lot of detail from a reading, because the nakshatras really can give you that. So once again, the link to that is below. So let's get down to the astrology at hand, and I'm sure we'll be talking some nakshatras with that too. It's funny because when I started doing this last night, and I had to re-record it because the video didn't come out well, but one of the things I wanted to touch on is how sometimes when we have to wait a long time, it sometimes makes it so that we actually have to wait even longer, right? So we, go, okay, well, this situation is such that I really have to wait to do something. And then the longer you have to wait, the more it makes it so that the time is not right still. And so things get delayed even further. And look at the situation, right? So I waited, and had to wait a long time to do this week's video. And here it goes. It had to wait even longer to come out. But, here it is, so kind of invoked my own set of circumstances upon myself with, working with this week's astrology. Let's talk about this astrology. Now, Mars has now shifted to retrograde motion. Mars is that planet of motion, right? Mars rules motion. And when he's retrograde, it makes it very difficult, or when he's slowing down to station retrograde, I should say, it makes it very difficult for forward motion to happen. And when he's retrograde, it can make it feel like forward motion isn't happening either. And with Mars retrograde periods, it can feel sometimes very frustrating, right? Because you still feel that passion, you still feel that momentum, you still feel that desire to act, but you really can't do it. So what can you do about that? How can you use it? Well, you can take all of that energy and not turn it in on yourself and, have a lot of self-anger. I've heard from one or two of you saying that. But what you can do is use it to kind of go internal, search out, seek out. Mars is really like the cosmic surgeon. And on another level, he's like a cosmic purgative. He'll go in there, he'll purify, find all those areas of your life that you're not happy with, usually associated with wherever Mars is transiting, and equally with where Mars is located in your natal chart. And if you want to find out any of that information, please do schedule a consultation with me by the link that you now see below to my astrological services page. So he will go in and ferret out all the stuff that needs to really just be cleansed out or purified, right? And as Saturn is also retrograde, and Saturn and Mars have been applying to a conjunction, right? Well, now Mars is retrograde and is separating from that a little bit. But, for the initial little bit of time, that's going to feel even more powerful because Saturn's putting the brakes on and Mars himself is going inside. It feels like things are just not really going anywhere, right? And it feels like on one level, because you've had to delay things a little bit, Now things this week, you're feeling like it's a whole new set of circumstances, and you're going to have to delay things even more in one particular area of your life. But that's for a good reason. Let's start with Saturn and Mars, because they're still forming an aspect, right? And you're desiring to take action. But you don't just want to take any old action. You want to do the right thing. But because you have been having to wait for a while, well, now everything is up for review. And both Saturn and Mars are in Jyeshta Nakshatra. Jyeshta Nakshatra gives a very good overview of a situation. And if used properly, it can give you the capacity to rise above a situation, to really kind of see through the confusion and haze that's creating obstruction for you. And with this particular energy, it's likely that you're going to need to make some adjustments. What was strong, steady, and stable once before, well, now it's somewhat fluctuating. And one level of that might feel a bit puzzling or difficult, or like something you don't want to face, but the more you accept it, the better it's going to be, right? I'm going to take things aspect by aspect. Sometimes I just do a hodgepodge, but there's so much going on this week, I thought I'd go into all of it. Let's start with the sun. The sun, that planet of honor, that planet of dignity, that planet of, really wanting to shine, equally that planet of dharma, right? The sun this week is moving from Ashwini, is in Ashwini Nakshatra, and is going to be moving through Ashwini Nakshatra, and it's forming an aspect to both Jupiter and equally to Mars. And with this particular energy at the beginning of the week, well, one part of you was feeling poised to take action, right? And now you're dealing with a set of circumstances where there is so much fluctuation that it's feeling confusing for you in terms of which direction you actually need to head. And that's making it so that Jupiter, which ordinarily would be responsible for your expansion, Jupiter in Purva Palguni, well, you're really having to review things on a certain level and figure out the best way to proceed. Purva Palguni marks a resting point, right, in the journey of the soul, where the soul can kind of rest and regather itself and see which direction it needs to head with things. And as the sun is simultaneously forming an aspect to both Mars and Jupiter, it's about reviewing things. It's about seeing where your heart is with something. Things are going to be developing more quickly than perhaps you're initially comfortable with this week, and you may have to be facing some difficult internal truths in regards to a situation. But if you're willing to make adjustments, it's going to work in your favor, right? Equally, kind of moving ahead, and I'm getting my little pen out so I can cross off things that I've done so I don't miss something for you. Mars is equally forming an aspect to Jupiter. And we've spoken of Mars being in Jyeshta and Gemini. While Mars forming an aspect to Jupiter, it's really helping you, as long as you're determined and you're willing to be patient and you're loyal to whatever the cause might be, and the cause is going to relate to something that you're wanting to shift, a situation you're wanting to change. But you don't, like I said, you don't want to do it in just any old way. You're really wanting to look at the exact proper way to do it. Well, this Mars aspect to Jupiter can give you the capacity to do it, if you're willing to accept that now may not necessarily be a time for movement. Now is a time for review. Equally, we've got Mercury. Mercury transiting from Bharani Nakshatra to Kritika Nakshatra, right? And Mercury is forming an aspect to Mars. And Mars is in Mercury's nakshatra, and that's actually very important to the equation. But a development or a transition that initially was feeling rather smooth to you, well, now you're feeling insecure with some of the changes that are going on, and really having to look at things in a different light and review things, like I was saying. But primarily the Mercury aspect is making it so that you have to accept potentially some difficult truths, some harsh truths, as Mercury is first in Bharani Nakshatra, which Bharani is about transitioning from one phase of existence to another. And because of Mercury's position, and because Bharani is an Artha-driven nakshatra, which is very goal-directed, and Mercury at the beginning of the week is in the moksha section, or the liberation section of Artha nakshatra, you're wanting to be liberated, and you've got the right idea of how to do it. But then later in the week, Mercury will be in Kritika nakshatra, which is very kama-driven or desire-driven. And Mercury will be in the dharma section of that. So he's trying to, again, he has to figure out the right way to deal with things. And there's a lot of desire to really be able to figure it out, but he really can't quite find that idea or that concept, so to speak. And as he's doing that, he's transferring that energy over to Mars in Jyeshta nakshatra, which is ruled by Mercury, which is making Mars really kind of digest things and review things and make some internal adjustments. Now, equally, we've got an aspect from Venus. Venus transiting through, in the early part of the week, Revati nakshatra, and then towards the latter part of the week into Ashwini nakshatra, is equally forming an aspect to Mars. Mars is actually very active this week. Even though he's retrograde, he's very active and is involved in a lot of different aspects. Now, Venus in Revati, again, there's a tone of, things are kind of in a state of limbo. And sure, initially you're feeling strong with that. You're feeling strong with things being in a state of limbo because you know it's going in the right direction, in the direction that you want it to go. Well, later in the week, a lot of developments begin to take place that weren't really what you were expecting. And because of those developments happening at a really rapid pace, it's kind of got you in a position where you're going, I'm not really sure what the right thing to do with all of this is, right? And so you're trying to figure out on the practical level what needs to take place and having a little bit of a hard time with the adjustment, right? So just touching on a few extra aspects that are there. We've already been looking at the sun and Mercury in aspect to Jupiter and Mars. They're also forming an aspect to Saturn. Really, it's a lot of the very same energy, but because the sun is trying to figure out the way to keep its honor and the way to keep its dignity and the way to approach Dharma and not really make any mistakes with this new set of developments that's taking place in its aspect to Saturn. It's kind of telling Saturn to, you know what, even though you may be wanting to be focused and disciplined in terms of direction, we need to put the brakes on and we need to slow down a little bit. And we've already looked at Saturn and Mars. And equally, we need to look at the fact that Saturn and Venus are forming an aspect to Jupiter. So it's really saying a lot of the same things. The focal point really this week is Mars, and Mars internalizing things and needing to go through a process of purification, really needing to go deep. Even if it means going through your anger this week. And I really want to say that, because everybody hates that word, right? Everybody, when they hear that word anger, they get really pissed off, right? I bet you didn't know I could do that, did you? I look all meek and mild, and you didn't think I could get really angry and pissed off, right? But let's take a look at that, Is there anything in existence that is not spiritual? Isn't everything spiritual? On that level, isn't anger spiritual, right? Because sometimes that anger, without that anger, we wouldn't have the motivation, right? Sometimes we let it build up a little too much. Sometimes we don't find healthy outlets for it, and we find unhealthy outlets for it, like having a tantrum. I often thought it would be a good idea to start a new type of yoga called tantrum yoga, right? And it's kind of a play on words there, where, people just really get all their anger out until they find out where they're really at about something, right? But, it's like it's less that we need to have the tantrums. It's more just we need to find a way of letting that energy motivate and letting that energy move. And when Mars is retrograde, it's more of the fact that you need to, move some things internally. You need to get rid of some areas of your life, what you're feeling about things. Let's say, for instance, if Mars is transiting your 12th house, you might be going back over some things from the past and going, you know what, I wasn't happy with the way that that stuff happened. And really, I'm not going to have that again, right? So I'm going to do the things that it takes to make a change with it. So you begin to review the right ways to deal with it, right? Mars is very helpful when he's retrograde. He only goes retrograde every couple of years, but he's very helpful when he goes retrograde because he's going to make it so that when he goes back direct, which will happen on the 30th of June, there's going to be some very big changes in your life in the direction that Mars is moving in. Right? So if you could use a little bit of help understanding, dissecting, which is a good Mars word, dissecting, right? Because Mars is that surgeon, right? If you could use some help dissecting whatever Mars is about in its retrograde period in your chart, just a reminder once again about my astrological services page where you can schedule an astrological service with me. That'll do it for a look at the week ahead through Vedic astrology for the week beginning the 18th of April 2016, taking you through the 24th of April. Until next time, please do take the very best care of yourself and everybody who's waiting for more of those Rahu videos. Well, they will be there next week. And also to let you know, next week, if you've made it all the way through this video, here's a little bit of word. I put it at the bottom too. That next week on the 25th, I will be on KRS channel talking to Kapil Raj about K2. So I hope you'll all tune in then. Take care. Bye now.